We are currently living in an era where the lines between reality and digital worlds are blurring. Every year, massive studios boast about how their new game features photorealistic lighting, perfectly simulated wind physics, and character models with individually rendered pores. Ray tracing, DLSS 5. We are told that these are the ultimate goal of gaming, to create a world so real that you forget you are looking at a screen. But as the technology gets better and the graphics get closer to actual reality, I find myself feeling something I never expected to feel: boredom. I look at these flawless, hyper-realistic worlds and I just feel exhausted. It makes me wonder, what if this relentless pursuit of absolute realism is actually a mistake? What if by trying to simulate real life down to the smallest detail, developers are slowly killing the very magic that makes video games special? Today I wanna talk about why realism is boring and how the obsession with making things look and feel too real is actively destroying our immersion. Let's start with the visual aspect. You would think that photorealistic graphics automatically make a game more immersive, right? But the truth is, extreme realism can actually break your immersion, especially when it clashes with the inherent absurdity of video game logic. Imagine you are playing Resident Evil 9 and you are playing as Leon. The graphics are absolutely mind-blowing. The lighting is indistinguishable from a live-action movie. You can see the dirt under Leon's fingernails and individual threads on his jacket. It looks completely, undeniably real. But then you walk into a room and a giant, mutated, car-sized spider drops from the ceiling. You pull out a shotgun, do a tactical roll, and blow it to pieces with a bunch of acrobatic moves. Now, in a vacuum, fighting a giant spider is cool. But because the game looks so incredibly realistic, your brain subconsciously expects the world to follow the rules of actual reality. When the visual fidelity is that high, seeing a giant, absurd monster or killing it with flashy finishers might shatter the illusion. The events unfolding on screen may start to feel artificial, purely because the graphics are so realistic. You naturally expect realistic events from a game that looks this real. But when these impossible, otherworldly things happen, it can sometimes completely pull you out of the experience. The hyper-realistic visuals suddenly lose their believability the moment something entirely unrealistic occurs. However, if that exact same giant spider encounter happened in older Resident Evil games with their PS2 graphics and completely unrealistic gameplay, it wouldn't feel out of place at all. You wouldn't question it, because the artistic style of those PS2 games doesn't promise you absolute reality. Your brain accepts the absurdity as part of the universe. That's why sometimes abstract or stylized graphics are actually much better at keeping you immersed than photorealism. They leave room for your imagination to accept the impossible. There's actually research backing this up. A paper published in the IEE Transactions on Visualization and Computer Graphics titled Perception of Human Motion with Different Geometric Models points out how the type of 3D model we look at directly affects how we judge its movement. From this research, we can draw the following conclusion. The more realistic a character's texture and model are, the more our brain expects its movements and physics to be perfectly realistic. A flying stick figure doesn't bother our brains because it is an obvious abstraction where flaws are easily ignored. But with a hyper-detailed realistic human model, even something like its feet slightly sliding on the ground while running makes our brains say, "There's an error here. This is fake." This is the ultimate trap of photorealistic graphics. They demand absolute physical perfection just to maintain the illusion. But visual realism is only half the problem. The real issue, the thing that actively makes modern games tedious, is when companies try to make the gameplay and the animations too realistic. This brings me to Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, I have talked about this game before, and I acknowledge that its world building is an incredible technical achievement, but the game's obsession with realistic gameplay and animations is a perfect example of how realism kills fun. In Red Dead Redemption 2, everything has a painfully realistic animation. If you want to loot an enemy you just shot, you can't just walk over them and press a button to magically collect their items. No, Arthur Morgan has to physically stop, slowly bend down, reach his hand into the dead man's coat, rummage around and pull out a cigar. Now, is this realistic? Absolutely. This is exactly how looting a body would work in real life. But is it fun? No, it's incredibly tedious. After a few hours of playing, the sheer slowness of Arthur's animations drained my enjoyment so much that I literally just stopped looting people. I completely ignored a core gameplay mechanic because the realism made it a chore. When companies force this much weight and slowness into a game just for the sake of realism, I honestly don't understand the logic. If hyper-realism is the ultimate goal, where do we draw the line? If we are going to force players to watch a 5-second animation just to pick up a can of beans for the sake of realism, then just add a toilet mechanic too while you're at it. I mean, they even added a system where NPCs react to you differently if you get dirty or smell bad. If they are willing to go that far, if it's so incredibly important that Arthur acts like a real human being, then Arthur should have to stop what he's doing and go to the bathroom as well. And let's take it a step further. If you feed him some bad, expired meat from your inventory, he should get diarrhea in the middle of a shootout. Would you accept that? Would you want to play a game where your character suddenly can't sprint because they have an upset stomach? I know there are hardcore survival simulation fans out there who might actually want something like that, but for me, that sounds like a miserable experience. Because deep down, we all know one simple truth. This is a video game. We don't play games to experience the mundane, tedious friction of real life. We have enough of that every single day. We play games to escape. We play games for agency, for rhythm, and for flow. We don't need a game to simulate reality down to the atomic level for us to be immersed in it. Human beings are incredibly good at believing in fiction. This is something I have touched on before, the concept of the suspension of disbelief. When we consume a piece of media, we willingly and temporarily turn off our critical thinking and accept the rules of that universe. Think about anime, for example. When we watch an anime, what are we actually looking at? We are looking at two-dimensional drawings, just lines, colors, and static backgrounds. There is absolutely nothing physically realistic about an anime, and yet we get completely immersed. We cry for those characters, we feel their pain, we feel their joy, and our brains fully believe in the reality of those colorful lines for 20 minutes at a time. We don't need the characters to have individually rendered hair follicles. We don't need the world to have ray-traced reflections. We just need a good story, a consistent art style, and a world that respects its own rules. If we can't completely immerse ourselves in a 2D drawing, why are AAA studios so obsessed with convincing us that their digital worlds are more realistic? It feels like they are insecure. It feels like they don't trust us to use our own imaginations anymore. When a game insists on being perfectly realistic, it strips away the magic of the medium. It turns the playground into a simulation. It trades the joy of interactivity for the burden of authenticity. I don't want my games to feel like real life. Real life is slow. Real life is full of waiting. Real life is overwhelming. Real life is boring. I want my games to be games. I want them to be fast, responsive, and willing to embrace the absurdity of their own existence. I would rather play a cel-shaded, clunky, but mechanically brilliant game where I can instantly pick up loot and run at full speed than slowly trudge through a beautiful photorealistic museum where I am punished for trying to have fun. Realism isn't the pinnacle of gaming, it's just an aesthetic choice, and lately it is one that is becoming increasingly boring. So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.